What's up, hackers? Welcome to TTI Live. My name is Taggart, and with me today is special guest HuskyHacks. Say hi, Husky.
Hello. How is everyone doing? Chat. You guys look great, or you all look great, and I'm glad to be here.
Glad to have you with us. We have a lot to do today. Oreo bite right off the bat. Redeem is playing me a song. I will do it, but hold on to it. Hold on to it, Oreo. We've got some stuff to get through before I'm in a position to do some piano antics. All right, so before we get kicked off with our main material for today, as always, we're going to do This Week in Cyber. We have 3 stories for you. The first one, how about some good news up first? Do you feel like some good news, Husky?
I would like some good news.
All
I
right,
would love some good news.
here's some good news. The FBI, the Department of Justice, in conjunction with Interpol, Europol, I should say, the German Federal Criminal Police Office, the Secret Service, and generally an international effort, have seized the Hive ransomware site.
It's just like they got like the whole band together for this one.
Oh yeah, you gotta love international cooperation.
They sent like helicopters to people who were like retired on their farms in the backcountry, and they're like, "We got one more op we need you for."
So a couple of
Yeah.
notable things from this story. Up first, it turned out that the way this happened was that the FBI had infiltrated Hive since July of 2022 and was just laying in the cut, collecting evidence and waiting for their moment to strike. That was part 1. Now, part 2, I think, is one of the craziest parts to me. Husky, if you don't know, would you like to take a guess as to where the Hive main servers were hosted?
Like some kid's basement in the UK.
So yeah, obviously, lapse of style that makes total sense. If you would think,
Yeah.
as the Black Hills folks like to say, it's only ransomware if it comes from the ransomware region of Eastern Europe. Otherwise, it's just
Right.
sparkling malware.
Yes, exactly.
Yes, Praxis has it correct. They were actually hosted down the street from me in Los Angeles, California, which was a
Yeah.
huge benefit for the Department of Justice because then they could get a
Oh,
warrant for the machines.
throw the book at him. Yeah, if you can make it here, you can make it anywhere.
So thank you very much to the Hive ransomware group for hosting their stuff within the United States. Very appreciated. Uh, it also turns out that the main site, like the shaming site, was seized, but it turns out there are a couple of other subsites that still have victim data that are up. So we're still waiting for those to come down or what's going on. But the FBI is continuing to give out decryptors to victims. And actually, this was cool, was doing it on the down low since July. So if they had access to the decryptor, right, they were kind of like slipping it to the victim, like, don't say anything, but we're in there. Here's your decryptor. You can recover without paying anything. So I usually don't have cause to be very happy about law enforcement, but good job, FBI. This was
Yeah,
good
no,
work.
do your job, as they say. That's like a kind of Sam Fisher style infiltrate and break them up and get the people who need the decryption keys. The decryption keys is textbook, start to finish. Good job across the board.
Exactly right. All right,
You
so
love to see it.
I do. Bolstered by that good news, we're going to move into some embarrassing news for GoToMeeting, or GoTo, I should
Oh my,
say,
oh my goodness.
also known as GoTo breaching. Okay, so we
Yeah.
know, of course, we know, of course, that the child company of GoToMeeting, LastPass, basically did a sideshow Bob and stepped on all of the rakes possible in the last couple of months. But it turns out that GoToMeeting wasn't doing that much better. So they were experiencing a breach at the same time. What they have released this week was information that customer data was exfiltrated in that breach, but not just any customer data. They kind of make it a little bit they try to obfuscate it a little bit in their response, but basically, in addition to customer data that was encrypted, according to them, the encryption keys were disclosed as well, so they weren't they weren't encrypted at all.
Yeah, I don't. It's funny. Like LastPass, it's like the last time I'm gonna use this company's products. Um, Yeah, if you like, it begs so many questions. I mean, I didn't look into the news story like from front to back, and there are a lot of questions. Obviously, when companies undergo breaches like this, they're very, very cagey with the details that they put out. But there's so many questions. What keys, and why did they have encryption keys for whatever data this is, and are those keys for client data? Like, are, I guess, my questions. Like, I can understand if there are some encrypted, if there are globs of encrypted data in the environment, but like they're like server side or something like that. But like, if this is for like client data, ouch.
Totally.
So,
Totally.
yeah.
And there's something rotten in the state of GoTo, basically.
For sure.
Um,
For sure.
you can't. I don't imagine that there's any company who is looking to renew contracts with them at this point, if they have enterprise contracts. So sell. I guess I don't actually know if GoTo is a publicly traded company, but if it is,
I mean, like, the meta would be short this company if they are publicly traded, but like, I don't know.
yeah.
I don't think they're publicly traded, but
All right.
steer clear, I guess, is probably the better piece of advice for that.
For sure. And like the last piece I really wanted to say on this was, it is not, just like with LastPass, it is not the case that they got breached is not the story here.
Yeah.
In the fullness of time, everybody's going to get breached.
Yeah,
it is how you handle it, and this was absolutely the most ham-fisted way to possibly go about it.
Yeah, it's the caginess, it's the, at this time we don't think that it, but we don't know, but it's like that kind of like corporate caginess when breaches occur, and they have to disclose this. It's tired. It's absolutely tired, and that's what they're going to continue to do because they have stakeholders and they're corporations and they can get away with it. But yeah, I mean, you know me. I don't appreciate the corporate game. I don't appreciate the corporate lingo and speak, and it's just it's exhausting. Anyway.
As opposed to me, who lives and breathes the Fortune 100 life.
Yeah, of course.
Absolutely.
Well, you're absolutely the other side of the coin here.
As evinced by my
that's a joke. That's a joke.
Gordon Gecko, as evinced by my Gordon Gecko hoodie here. Okay, last story. This was your entry, Husky. So I'm gonna let you take the lead on. Talk a little ChatGPT.
ChatGPT. I mean, if you're gonna hit me with some musical theater, I guess I'm gonna hit you with some Shakespeare and say, "Much ado about basically nothing" is the name of the story. Okay, so a CyberArk researcher put out a blog post on the official CyberArk page that talked about our lovely, beloved little robo buddy, ChatGPT, and how they were using it to write polymorphic malware and super scary fear, uncertainty, and doubt, FUD. I read the article. So let me start off with the, I don't want people to get the wrong impression here. You can absolutely write malware in ChatGPT. It will let you. You have to, like the article kind of talks about, you have to get around the kind of content filtering. If you straight up ask it, it's going to say, I don't think I should be doing this, but if you can work your way around that and you can use it to write malware. Have I done that? Yes, in a legal, ethical, like I'm doing my job as a red teamer. Doing my job as a red teamer, I've used ChatGPT to write malware. Period. Next thought. The notion of a scary, like destructive polymorphic malware, this new strain of polymorphic malware that's coming out because of ChatGPT is ridiculous, and we need to stop the FUD here.
Can you define polymorphic in less than 20 words?
So, like, for explain it like I'm 5. Polymorphic malware or a polymorphic virus is a piece of malware that can change itself to avoid signature-based detection, right? So it will rewrite parts of its code. It will rewrite parts of its hex, binary configuration if necessary. So there are other programs that do this. They're called packers, and they are easily identifiable and easily available. You can find them for free. Here's like the ChatGPT hype and the FUD here needs to stop with this particular one. So like I said, you can absolutely write malware using ChatGPT, but you could write this type of malware before ChatGPT existed. And this is a language model that was trained with data up to 2021, right? So it's just a language model giving us back the language data that fits the question that you've asked it with a data set that goes up to 2021. So they were kind of like in this article pitching it like it was this kind of like new strain of malware that was going to be super destructive.
It literally is writing malware with Stack Overflow, but with extra steps.
Yeah, it's doing Stack Overflow, GitHub. It just has correlated that with a language processing model. So I don't know. I mean, if you think that let me put it to you this way. You can absolutely use ChatGPT to write malicious code and get it past antivirus and static signature detections, and maybe even some dynamic signature detections. If you think that ChatGPT is going to spit out this like new, like extremely dangerous form of malware that's going to come out, it's just not going to do that. It's going to put pieces of code together in such a way that your flat file antivirus signatures have not seen before. But you could easily do that from stitching GitHub code together beforehand, right? You can easily do that from writing custom malware. You could easily do that from writing a Python script and putting it through, Py to exe. Compile a Python script down and you have defeated antivirus, Windows Defender, that kind of thing. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, what seems to be happening, right? Everyone is lighting their hair on fire about this new way of producing knowledge or producing information. And I agree that the apparatus is really interesting. And I use ChatGPT frequently. And it helps point me in a direction when I don't know what direction to go to. It very rarely entirely solves a problem for me, right? In fact, it never does. But the question for me is, has ChatGPT materially lowered the barrier to entry to create malware?
I was just thinking that, and I think it's lowered it a little bit, but you're still giving pieces of a plane to a pilot, right? And so like the pilot needs the experience to be able to, flick this switch on the dashboard and then know when to, throttle down and know when they have enough rudder authority. Like that all of that stuff is very complicated and takes a human to correlate the data as it's coming in, right? So yeah, it will lower the barrier to entry for malware authoring a little bit, but materially, I don't think it's any more than what you could do from correlating open source things on GitHub. It just takes a little bit less time.
No,
right?
And I think that's right. And I think that the bigger reality is that anytime you mention it, like we're doing here, although I don't think we're taking advantage of any SEO because I don't know how to do that. Is that the more stories are written about ChatGPT, the more they get read, the more they get clicked on. So it's like that old South Park episode, right? So basically they're absolutely just putting words together with ChatGPT to see what happens and see what gets clicks.
So yeah, much ado about very little. I wouldn't say nothing. Much ado about very little. Don't worry about ChatGPT malware. It's not enabling anything that you couldn't do beforehand.
Absolutely, sound and fury signifying nothing. We'll double down on the Shakespeare.
Right back full circle. Right back full circle. All right. Anyway.
All right. So today we're actually talking about subdomain takeovers. And I want to tell you why. Subdomain takeovers have been a big part of my life recently because education institutions have been the victims of them in a pretty widespread campaign, at least one that I know about. And I know for sure that there are going to be others, but how you hunt for them is kind of tricky. So I wanted to explore, first of all, who's getting got with this, how we can reproduce it, and then how we can hunt for it and protect against it. So Husky and I today are going to perform live on air for you a subdomain takeover. Husky's going to steal my stuff.
We're going to do our best like NahamSec kind of live recon thing because like the interesting thing about this, so Taggart knows this, and for people in the chat that maybe don't know this, I don't do the bug bounty game. I'm barely a web application hacker at all. I know enough to get by. I defer to the people who are better at that, like Taggart. in the situations where I need to. But in bug bounty hunting, you'll hear the experienced and accomplished bug bounty hunters say things like, to get in, when people ask us how do we get into bug bounty hunting, we usually say pick a methodology, pick a technique, and research that across the board for a long time, and you'll get better and better and better at that. If I were to go into the bug bounty game, and I'm not going to, but if I were to do that, this is the technique that I would start with, I think. Because the methodology is so simple. All it is recon. It's recon, recon, recon. And if you've done enough recon and you found one of these, the actual steps to exploitation are extremely simple. So
yeah, it's bananas.
Let's get into it. It is OP, this technique. So let's get into it, and I'm very excited to do this.
Me too. Okay, so let's get out of this. I'm down in Cali. Let's start with who's getting got with this. A couple of months ago, you may remember that I did a stream on some research I was doing about this underground Indonesian gambling ring. So just as a refresher, gambling is illegal in Indonesia. It is nevertheless big business because humans are humans. And so it turns out the way that a lot of these online gambling organizations do their business, because they can't register Indonesian domains, is what they'll do is they'll proxy off of legitimate websites elsewhere. How are they doing this? They're using one of two techniques. The technique that we focused on during the first stream was WordPress compromise. So basically what they're doing is if they find a WordPress site and it's got default or easily guessable creds, they're attacking that, or maybe a plugin vulnerability, although you don't usually have to work that hard. You find a site that has easy passwords, you log in, you drop your content on a subdirectory, right? You do an uploader, and then you can drop whatever PHP you want in whatever subdirectory. Apache or Nginx is going to route that for you, and you're done. So let's take a look at one of those. Nope. I need to get one of the... Hold on. I'm going to get one that's a path. Perfect. Oh, this is Penn State. So we have kaseki.conferences.psu.edu/sotpulsa.mpo. Penn State, I'm pretty sure, didn't make this directory. Okay, if we go to just the site, oh no, that's totally taken. So it's double. If we go to conferences. So we actually found we hit the daily double. If we go to conferences.psu, okay, so perfect. So conferences.psu.edu, right? Penn State is good, right? But Kaseki, which is a subdomain, so we'll figure out how that worked, right, is no good. But in addition to that, there's there's a directory. I'm trying to find one that is like legitimately a directory compromise. Okay, actually I know which one it is. Apologies to my colleagues up north at Berkeley.
Yep.
Okay, so if we go to bates.berkeley.edu, Dr. Bates, right, has a blog. I haven't checked this, but I'm like 1,000% sure it's wplogin.php. Oh yeah, so it's wordpress.com. So this was compromised, and this is, by the way, this has been reported, just heads up. But so this directory, right, is part of that website now. This is not a subdomain takeover.
Right.
But this is what we saw happening with this Indonesian gambling ring. And by the way, if you're curious like what this says, let's just translate it. Thank you, Vivaldi. Ah, dang it. If I select Indonesian, I think it'll work. There we go. Today, playing gambling games is certainly more sophisticated and easy for those of you who are interested and addicted to playing for profit. One of these games is a solution for those of you who want to get a lot of money with a short time, For that, it's good to see some Faktar with Liga Kiputra, who are recommended and provide tangible, lucrative benefits,
Outstanding.
Yeah, great. That's exactly what I wanted. So this is this is the WordPress compromise. So right, all of these are getting proxied off of whatever app they're using, and they're just it is more musical theater, right? These guys are Indonesian Nathan's Detroit.
Yep.
And they're floating this around different domains and cycling where they're proxying to, and they have all of these different places that they can proxy to. So they'll never get caught because they're never in one place for too long.
Yep.
Okay, so that is the WordPress version of this.
Textbook like weak WordPress credentials goes into log into the admin portal, upload something to the actual page, right?
Yep. Now, insanely, this is harder than the thing we're going to show today.
It absolutely is. And that's what I'm saying. This technique we're about to show is recon. That one that you just saw, WordPress abuse, requires you to brute force passwords or carefully guess passwords, or in the case of weak credentials, just try admin or whatever, and then inject content into the CMS itself. That takes more steps than what we're about to show you.
Yep.
In terms of subdomain takeover.
All right, so let's take a look at, okay, so, wow, this one was crazy. So, conferences, let's go to another one. Okay, so this is Cornell. Sorry, Cornell. So, if you look at this domain, right, they didn't make this, right? The slot Loire Nagari GSM.Cornell. They did not make this slot Loire Nagari subdomain. They maybe made gsm.cornell.edu. It doesn't exist. And that's exactly the issue, right? The domain is registered, but it's not pointing to anything. Same thing with Brigham Young here, right? This does.
Brigham Young.
Oh yeah. Right. So the cs.byu.edu exists, but eve.cs.byu.edu exists, but it's not Brigham Young's, right?
Right.
This ain't. They're not doing this in Salt Lake City, I'm pretty sure. So, what is happening here? There are go ahead.
Yeah. So, what you're looking at right now is a case where the TLD, or the main domain of an organization, thought it would be wise to register a subdomain for some specific purpose, right? And let's say that at the taggartinstitute.org, we decided that, oh, hey, we want to start a blog, right? And for our blog, we're going to use a content management system on GitHub Pages, just, as an example. And we set up a GitHub Pages blog at taggartinstitute.org, and we call it blog as the subdomain .taggartinstitute.org. And we have the GitHub pages there, and it could be, a bunch of different other services, but we'll just use GitHub pages for now. Let's say a year later, we decide that the blog's not doing too well, and we decide to decommission it, right? Our DNS record to blog.taggartinstitute.org is still pointing towards something at GitHub pages, but there is, let's say we've decommissioned that completely. All that's left there is a 404 at GitHub pages.
Right. So
there are certain services that will allow you to claim that subdomain with zero, and I mean zero authentication, and instantly you can put your own content in its place.
That's exactly right. And so what are those services? But by the way, before we go any further, I want to just drop these amazing links. There are 3 sources that I give people to educate them about, as my mouse dies, to educate them about subdomain takeover. This one from Microsoft is excellent, and we'll talk a little bit about dangling DNS entries, and that's kind of what you were just talking about. HackerOne for the bug bounty hunters, which I also don't really truck with, but this is a really good write-up of the issue, how to look for it and how they work. And then, of course, from Mozilla, they have a really good bit of information about that as well. So these 3 resources are usually what I give people to talk about subdomain takeovers and how they work. In terms of the services that are vulnerable to this, it's a bunch, because the ability to bring websites up on somebody else's service, and like maybe there's a free tier and then you'll pay for extra services later, that's like really appealing, right? And there are a lot of things that do that. In fact, there are so many that there's a whole GitHub repo that is dedicated to this called Can I Take Over XYZ? Thank you very much to Ed Overflow for this piece of work here.
Really, really nice. And this has kind of opened my eyes because now I'm like looking around at other services that have like a DNS registration component, and I'm like, I wonder. And like so this has kind of opened my eyes to the whole process, because it makes a lot of sense when you think about, when you look at that list and you go through the different services that you can do this on, it starts to make a ton of sense that you're like, oh, no kidding. Like all of these services have like a plug and play DNS registration components, but they also lack the authentication that says, oh, hey, hold on, are you actually from the taggartinstitute.org? So yeah, put those things together and you have the primitives for a DNS subdomain takeover.
Exactly right. One of them I just want to shout out here, one of them that I've been encountering a lot that seems to be crazy popular in education, and I don't know why. I think there must be some contractor that does websites for schools like universities that relies on this. But the one that I kept on finding in my research was Pantheon. Which have you ever heard of Pantheon?
No, actually, this week when you sent me that information about Pantheon was the first time I'd heard of it.
If you do this search that I was doing, like the Cetus Judy, which just means gambling site or game site in Indonesian, if you do that and like in url.edu, if you do this particular search in DuckDuckGo or Google or whatever, it won't take long for you to find a Pantheon site. And if they've shut it down, right? If they've shut it down, then it'll be like a Pantheon 404. So now you know, oh, okay, someone finally took this down. I don't know why, but Pantheon, and the reason I'm bringing this up is that I reached out to them specifically, and they were actually really cool. First of all, the system worked. I did a dig request. I found the abuse email address from their dig request. I emailed it hoping that it existed. It did. Somebody got back to me right away saying, we're aware of this active campaign. We're looking to add extra protections, which is probably going to look like a text record or something for DNS to verify that it's your account, for the redirection to take place. And so that's coming to Pantheon in the next some amount of time. Yes, Conti, we always record. This will be on YouTube in 24 hours, and it'll be available on Twitch immediately. Okay, so let's talk Recon.
So like a lot of other things, I mean, Web Recon is a game of enumeration and open source intelligence. And at this point, I mean, you've seen a lot of the recon that you'd probably want to do for this. Critically here, in that, can I take over this subdomain? Is that the right? Can I take over XYZ? In that repository, you have a list of fingerprints, right? And so when you're doing this recon, the services that are vulnerable to this each have a fingerprint that you can identify.
Mm-hmm.
For example, GitHub Pages is the example that we'll do in this stream here in a little bit. Let's say you recon a page for the organization that you're pen testing or doing a bug bounty for, and you receive a 404 error that has a passage of text that says there is no, or specifically I'm looking at it right now, this site configured at this address does not contain the requested file. And it also has GitHub Pages on the page in the body of the HTTP response. You can fingerprint that as a service that is vulnerable to this, knowing that GitHub Pages allows you to replace a CNAME record basically with something with no authentication, right?
Exactly.
So your fingerprinting here, your recon for this is going to come down to a whole lot of subdomain enumeration in the first place. So against taggartinstitute.org, you're going to enumerate subdomains and see all of the things blank.taggartinstitute.org. Once you have a list of subdomains, you're going to run something like Eyewitness or Aquatone to look at the different pages there and see if you can find any, or you can do this programmatically in the command line and just run through and scrape the content at each of those subdomains to see if any of them match these fingerprints. Then, if you find that, you probably have the recipe for a subdomain takeover.
Why, you could even use a Jupyter notebook.
Yeah, yeah, look at that.
But let's actually do this, right? So what we're gonna do is I have some of these tools queued up. You can see I'm in Kali Linux here, and I've already run some basic DNS enumeration. My DNS enumeration tool of choice is OWASP's Mass. Now that I know how to use it, it used to be Sublister. I used to be a big Sublister stan, and Sublister's awesome, but now that I know how to use a Mass, oh my god. So I have registered a domain called alfarts.com because I couldn't think of anything quieter. And so you can see that by doing both, it's doing brute force and doing actual DNS lookups, it's found quite a few subdomains for me. It's found beta.alfarts.com, hp2, alfarts.com, blog, alpha.dev, and then alpha.alfarts.com. And if you look carefully, you can see that I have different ASNs for different results, right? Now, this is the enumeration. If I want to see more information about it, I can ask for a massdb-d alfarts.com. And I want to do show. There we go. So those are what I found, right? I can enumerate further if I want. I can just do the discovered names if I want the ASNs, but this is pretty good. So if I just want the names, right, and I'll send that to alfarts alfarts.txt. Okay, so I have my list of subdomains. I performed my enumeration there. All right, it's a short list, but this is a demo, so work with me, people. Work with me. Mm-hmm. Okay, so now we're going to take that alfarts.txt, and we're actually going to cat it to the tool Aquatone. Aquatone is archived, but it slaps.
Still works, though.
I love Aquatone. And by the way, one of the reasons I love Aquatone is because it takes that can I take over XYZ and bakes it right in. So what it will do is as it's performing takeovers, if there's a 404, like you were just saying, it's going to indicate whether the site is available for takeover. Now, at the current moment, that won't be the case, but we're going to run this more than once and we'll see what the difference is. So let's cat alfarts.txt to Aquatone. And it just goes. It's a Go binary that I've just installed. Okay. Boy, it hasn't run anything. Oh, let me fix that. Let's replace the top with https:// Too many slashes.
These Vim skills are really awesome, Taggart. I wonder if there's going to be a place soon that I can learn all these awesome Vim skills.
Oh, maybe.
Stand by. Anyway.
If only. All right, let's try that one more time. There we go. So Aquatone, what does it do? It takes screenshots and it gives us a report. So notice that I have a whole bunch of stuff that just showed up in my directory here. Let me fire up my file browser and I'm going to go over to my actual window and I'm going to open up the Aquatone report.
Sitting on a park bench.
Nice.
I think like
what? No.
Understand that.
Not a lot of Jethro Tull fans, you think, in our audience? All right, I'm just going to open it straight in Vivaldi because I haven't changed those links from Brave. Documents, demos, subdomain takeover. There we go. Thank you. Okay. God, I love Aquatone. It's so good. And it's so good even for doing like reports. By the way, this isn't just bug bounty, right? Like I do this at work.
Right. Yeah. This is a common refrain in the industry. How do I learn how to bug bounty is a common question. The answer is the skills that web application penetration testers, web application security testers, and attack surface security auditing. All of those skills are the same. There is no like bespoke bug bounty skills. It's all web application enumeration and exploitation. So yeah.
And organizations care about what their external disposition is, and it's a trust but verify. Like a mature organization wants to have a full inventory of their web applications, right? But guess what? People spin stuff up all the time, and you're never entirely sure without checking for yourself what is out there.
Yeah, and like we just saw, universities are getting hit by these campaigns all the time. Okay, why might that be? Because universities are like cities worth of infrastructure. I used to work on the MIT infrastructure, the network infrastructure. That is literally a city's worth of infrastructure in a single domain, MIT.edu. So when you think about like, well, why don't how can we prevent things like this from happening? Well, like, people are spinning up these resources all the time that are externally available to the public internet. That's why you need to do good attack surface reduction auditing, which is an extension of web application security, just kind of at the like grand scale.
Exactly. Okay, so you can see here that Aquatone has a really nice kind of view. It shows us the screenshot of the site. It also gives us what technologies are under the hood. And this one is interesting, the blog.alfarts.com. I left this one alone specifically. Now, interestingly, it doesn't say that it is vulnerable to domain takeover, although this would be one of the things that you would expect if you were doing it in Azure. But this is, so you can have this. And by the way, I'll also mention that Aquatone has two other outputs that I think are of value, one visual and one extremely not. It has a graph view that rules, and it'll give it to you by similarity, by technology, right, and by IP address. Amass can do this too, by the way. If we do amass dbdalfarts.com, what is it, D3, I think. Amass, is it not? It's amass viz. My bad, not DB. Amass viz D3. Okay. Has made for us an amass.html. Which also gives us this graph of data about how things are related. And by the way, if you see a CNAME record here, guess what? Now you know. This right here, this link, and this is actually what we're going to do right now. The beta.alfarts.com. If you see a CNAME record going to GitHub pages, now you know.
Ding, ding, ding.
That is, if this doesn't exist, now you know. Right. Yeah. This is a...
Yeah, I'm sorry. You can finish. I was
going to say, I'm going to shut down this beta.alfarts.com. I'm going to shut it down, and we're going to rerun this and see what happens.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, this is worth mentioning is that, okay, so a CNAME record is an alias in DNS, right? So a CNAME record will say, hey, can you please point to www.taggardinstitute.org? That should be an alias for another web resource somewhere, right? If you find a CNAME record that points to content that already exists on the GitHub page and it is actually serviceable, if there is a blog there or some other kind of thing there, you can't really do this, right? This technique works because there is a CNAME pointing to something that does not exist, right?
Yeah.
So if we shut this down, if we remove the actual content there and nothing is being served out of that location where the CNAME is pointing, we've got a winner.
Yep. By the way, in case you're curious where I got this, I found this the other day. Is it Gift Cities? Yeah, this is a service of the Internet Archive, and it's an
It's like the
archive.
OG under construction thing, right?
It has like, if you do construction, it has a database, so good, of old school animated GIFs from GeoCities
Oh my God.
that you can use, and I'm going to undertake an entire rebrand of the institute to do this.
We're going back to the 90s, friends.
Yeah, look forward to the Twitch InfoSec web ring coming to
Oh
you in
man, I would love
Q2
it.
2023.
Yeah.
Okay, so beta.alpharts.com, as you can see, is pointing to content. How is it doing that? As Husky was saying, I have myself a CNAME record. Beta.alpharts.com is pointing to my GitHub account. That is how that works. Now, over on GitHub, look at this CNAME record. I didn't make this. GitHub Pages made this for me.
This is an interesting one. There are certain things in GitHub repositories that are like specially marked files, right? If you're running a GitHub page, this CNAME file is one of those specially marked files. So that will be generated as you bring your web resources online. Or you can go in and edit that directly, and when you commit it to the repo, when the page is built again, it will build with that CNAME, right?
Yep.
So yeah, interesting. I didn't know that. But yeah, the CNAME is stored as an actual GitHub file in the repository.
Yeah, I didn't make this GitHub workflows either, right? Which is kind of, it does its own GitHub Actions thing to deploy websites. Now, this is a static HTML, so you don't need to do anything. But if it were like a Jekyll site or like a static site generator, you can have that build for the deploy rather than doing that pre-push. So, okay, I'm going to shut down beta.alpharts.com. I'm not going to get rid of the repo, but I am, in fact, going to shut down the domain link. Yep. Angel asks, so we could GitHub dork and try to find CNAME files, which would be possible takeovers. Yeah, you can.
Yes. And again, it doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to be takeoverable if there is something actively being served out and that CNAME points to that active file, or that active page rather.
So,
but yes, that would be a good GitHub dork to go do some recon.
And in fact, I have done exactly that, looking for, because some of those Indonesian gambling sites are hosted on GitHub, and so you can actually go find them and see how the takeover worked. Okay, so you can see here that this is my custom domain. It's set to beta.alpharts.com, and by the way, it will route even before the verification finishes.
Yeah,
it don't care.
I love that.
So I am gonna remove this. Please remember to remove any GitHub Pages DNS records for this domain if you do not plan to continue using it with GitHub Pages. I don't need to pay attention to that.
Oops, forgot to do that. Oh yeah, we'll put a ticket in. Don't worry, that'll get taken care of. The admin team's on it. NetAdmin's gone on 45 weeks of leave, walking around New Zealand right now. Don't worry about it. Yeah, well, moving on to solution the rest of the stuff in our problematic organization, and we forget to decommission the CNAME record. Oh no.
Exactly. Now, does this, we reload this page, it's still there. It'll keep routing for a minute.
Yeah, and it'll keep routing, and you also might be dealing with your cache.
Exactly.
Just any kind of cache in your web browser, right? But if you like
there it
curl
is.
the page at the okay.
So I did it in my private window. So now this is the trick. Now here's the deal. We're gonna rerun Aquatone.
Sitting on a park bench.
Boom! Look what it told us. Beta.alpharts.com, vulnerable to takeover on GitHub Pages. How freaking good is that?
That's really nice.
And it'll show in the where is my, did I close it? Yeah, here we go. Let me go back. Pages by hosts. And did it update? Yeah. Okay. So not only will it show me on the command line, but in my details, it'll tell me, hey, stupid, you're vulnerable to takeover here.
Wow,
and it'll
chef's kiss.
Yeah, wow. It's really, really good. I wish someone would take over the Aquatone project because it's too important to live fallow. I'm
It
not a
might
Go
get
programmer, but
the yeah, it might get the DNS or DN Spy X treatment or the Empire treatment, and somebody might pick it up. I really hope somebody picks it up because it's so good.
yeah. I know we have some Go programmers in the community, and if somebody wants to, own a project, this would be one because honestly, this thing's really important to me. It matters that Aquatone continues to exist and function because
Yeah,
I have a whole workflow that is built
yeah,
around this report.
yeah. This is ASR. This is attack surface reduction. This is the one of the critical skill sets of an enterprise level security administrator is to look at what the outside world can see about your organization. This makes that really, really easy.
Oh, right. The other thing I wanted to mention was there is another kind of output that Aquatone produces, which is JSON. So if we do cat Aquatone session.json, right, there's a bunch of junk in there. You can parse it with JQ if you want. I know. Everyone's like, oh God, no, not JQ. Perish the thought. But actually very handy to do. Right? Because we can see everything that it did, and then we can use that. We go down. Where's the beta? Okay, right. So the beta will say, does it have the findings here? I believe that it does. Yes. So in the tags, right, we could filter this down. I'm not writing this JQ query live.
Yeah.
We'll be here until sundown.
Yeah.
But then you can look for things with domain takeover in it, right? If you don't want to do it visually, you can programmatically search for this stuff. Or frankly, if you're doing it, if you don't want to futz with JQ, just freaking load it into Python and look at it as an actual object, a structured data. Or frankly, and this one's for HGB if they're watching, PowerShell, because PowerShell will process this actually much more easily than will plain text. Wasn't Aquatone retired, or did someone take over the project? Yeah, that's kind of what I'm saying, is that it's archived. It still
archived.
works.
It still works, but it's archived, yeah.
And I really want someone to take it over because
it's like Empire.
There's nothing that works as well.
Security picked up Empire.
Yeah. And by the way, I've used them all. Go Witness, iWitness, the Rust version of both of those. Like, they're all fine. Witness Me from Marcello.
Called like Rusty Witness.
Yeah.
Rusty Eyewitness.
Yeah, Witness Me is my second favorite from Marcello, but the report there is kind of wacky, and it has like its own built-in CLI for managing data. That's all cool, but there's nothing that does it as cleanly as Aquatone, in my opinion. Yep. So, okay, enough Aquatone love. Husky, I have now shut down beta.alfarts.com. You can steal it. You want to do that?
So, yeah, I am sharing my screen.
All right, let me bring that up for us.
And just to confirm, that's beta, right? BETA.
Yes.
Yeah, beautiful. Okay, so I'm a ne'er-do-well, or I'm a legitimate security researcher, and I'm a bug bounty hunter in some alternate life. That's not the one I'm currently living. Yeah, and I stumble upon, let's say that, alfarts.com is part of the Safe Harbor program, bug bounty program, or I work there, and I'm charged with looking through this organization to find their attack surface. I guess I should get consent before I do any of this. So, Taggart, do I have consent to penetration test and enumerate alfarts.com?
Whereas Michael Thomas, Michael Thomas Taggart agrees to the subdomain takeover by HuskyHacks on this day and on this date.
Love it. Heretofore with the anyway, this joke's going nowhere. So I'm enumerating, and I do, and we're gonna basically assume that I've done all the subdomain enumeration to get me to beta.alfarts.com. So I'm here at the page, right? So this is effectively if I run Aquatone and I see the page here, I'm looking at it with my own eyes and I can see 404, but there isn't a GitHub Pages site here. If I want to do this programmatically, kind of like what Aquatone does, curl https://beta.alfarts.com. I'm going to pipe this to egrep. I'm going to do -I for ignore cases there. And basically what I'm looking for is 404 or GitHub pages. And I think that should do it. Yep, there we go. I can obviously clean this up if I want to, right? Like I could run this through a script, but this is just to show
Yeah.
you this is programmatically how you would do something like this if you don't want to use Aquatone, if you want to use like curl and just stick to bash like that. But basically, same idea is that I'm finding a 404 page, but it also indicates that there's a GitHub page, that the backend is GitHub pages, and yeah, and that is there's no content to be found. So I don't know if everybody in the audience knows this, but on GitHub pages, you yourself can have a GitHub page at your own name, right?
Mm-hmm.
I have huskyhacks.github.io. It's going to be your GitHub name .github.io. I used this a very long time ago. This is like 2020 timeframe. I used this page to host a workshop that was about, appropriately enough, web application hacking that I presented to, appropriately enough, HackerOne. So I slicked that completely, and I went to that page and I changed it out. And in fact, I can do we'll do git branch to show you what I've got going on here. I've got a couple different branches here in this repository. One of them is going to be main. So if we git checkout main, switch to main, there's nothing here. All right. So if I were to do this, let's do nano cname, nano cname.
Breaking my heart with this nano, but I'll live with it.
I know. Beta.owlfarts.com. And I were to commit that to the repo, and then I do not recommend doing this. We're going to show you how to, we're going to show you the effects of this takeover first, but I'm going to show you like the recommended way. If you actually find this and you want to show impact without actually causing any harm, we're going to show you both of these ways. The first way I'm going to do is to show impact. The second way I'm going to show you is to show you how to do it without actually do it in a more responsible, safe manner. Right?
And we can't stress enough, right, that if you're going, as a bug bounty hunter or as a red teamer, like if you're going to demonstrate impact, you have to do it in a responsible way.
Do it safely. Yeah, exactly. I'm going to, and this is straight HTML. There's no PHP. There's nothing on the back end here.
Not even any JavaScript.
Not JavaScript. I'm going to do straight HTML, hello world from Husky, right? If I were to git commit, git add, right? I'll just add everything in there. Git commit doesn't really matter. That one right there, and git push to my main branch. Okay. Now part 2, over in my HuskyHacks, HuskyHacks.github.io. I have a couple different branches here. Remember, I've got main here. Main just received a commit, cname and index.html. What I have to do, because this GitHub page has not been built yet and it's not hosted yet, I have to go over to settings. I have to go down to pages here. And in pages, it's going to say source, deploy from a branch. And what we have to do is specify the branch that you want to deploy to. If you're in your main branch, that's what's going to be there. And that's a little bit of a spoiler there, but let's say that this custom domain field is blank, right? And I've already set up the CNAME record for this, but just for good measure, I'm going to do beta.owlfarts.com and save. And again, there's going to be no authentication here. Nobody stops me and says, is there any, are you actually from this organization or anything like that?
So recordscratch.wave. How could an organization or a service make this not happen, right? The way that you do it is very similar to the way that you do Let's Encrypt verification for wildcard domains. You don't have to do this for any old domain, but if you want a wildcard domain from Let's Encrypt, right, like star.taggerttech.com or something like that, what you have to do is you have to provide a DNS text record during the challenge, right? So it takes a couple of minutes because Let's Encrypt fires up and says, hey, go enter this DNS text record into your DNS settings. We will then check for it once it's propagated, and if the challenge is verified, then we will let you have this certificate. Otherwise, you're done. So if services like this wanted to produce some sort of actual verification that you own the domain and can make changes to it, then that's how they would do it.
Yeah. This entire process is missing a critical piece of authentication, and that's why this is happening. I want to highlight, literally on my screen, highlight that when I made that push and when I said deploy from branch, GitHub Pages is now building this website. Again, it's barely a website here. It's very simple, but it is deploying and it has just deployed. So if I go to beta.alfarts.com and refresh a couple times, let's see. Did this
Just check your
work?
CNAME record, see if it's changed.
Yeah, it's probably the CNAME record. Beta.alfarts.com. And this is going to clear text HTTP for some reason, which I'm not totally sure why that is.
Yeah, I'm seeing the same thing.
Interesting. Why don't I just try with blog?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, let's just switch over to blog because that was the one that we had before. Or maybe I could try to just rebuild the page. So if I do like nano index.
Well, the blog doesn't actually exist anymore because I changed it to beta.
Oh, right. Okay. So throw some ASDs in there. Git add.
It just takes a while for the deploy, I think.
No, the deploy is done now.
I mean, for it to propagate out to the...
Yeah, in my testing for this, it was pretty fast. So let's see. We'll go ahead and ASD that one.
Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, no, this should be good.
So I just pushed again to my main branch, and I guess now would be a good time to just check if your page is pulling from the actual branch. Oh, yeah, okay, so see, this is the issue. So I'm still pulling from my POC over here.
Okay.
So let's go over to main branch here and save, look at that. Okay, so GitHub page source saved, now I'm pulling from my main branch. So you might get got if you're not paying attention to your little, yeah, and oh, look at that, DNS check successful. Okay, great.
Great.
So, whoops. So if we go back to here.
Is the deploy finished?
Yep, it should be going now, actually, now that I think about it. So. And yeah, I guess now I can force the deployment again. So if I git push again, everything up to date.
This might be a good moment for the music break. Yeah, Trash Zeppelin. I have it open in a private window myself.
Hold on, I actually think I.
There it is. There it is. No, it's up now.
Oh, that's it. Yes. Okay. Great. Yep. There it is. Okay.
DNS propagation takes a second, so you just gotta be patient.
Yep. Okay. So there you go. So I am outside in this example. I'm outside the context of the organization, but I have successfully pushed HTML to a subdomain of an organization that I don't belong to in this, if I'm an actual criminal. That's it. That's all it takes. So yeah, just be careful of your which branch you're on, and be careful about which is deploying to where. But that was it. That was extremely easy.
Yeah, it's upsetting, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, you could do your music break now, and then we could go to the next portion, which is where we
Wildcard
take this thing up to 11. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Let's bring you back. There we go. We can still see you. Everything looks good. A little too easy. Yeah, it's really scary. Let's get the piano stuff up and ready for Oreo Bite. Should I do a Bright Eye song for you?
I mean, I would love that.
You got it, buddy.
Awesome.
All right, it should sound okay. I actually tried to make it a little louder. Oh, I forgot to turn the camera on. There we go. All right, this is Cape Canaveral by Connor Oberst. Oh, brother totem pole, I saw your legends lined up. I never felt more natural apart. I just came apart. Please, 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 Sister Socrates, you always answer with a question. Show some kindness to a petty thief. Forgive, you did forgive. Watch the migrant smoke in the old orange grove. The red rocket blaze over Cape Canaveral. You've been a father to me in 1960s speak. In the comatose joy like we're on TV. While the mountainside was shining wild colors of my destiny. I watched your face age backwards, changing shape in my memory. You taught me victory was sweet, even deep in the cheap seats. Hey, Mother Interstate, can you deliver me from evil? Make me honest, make me a wedding cake. Atone, I will atone. Wait, mighty outer space. All that flying saucer terror made me lazy drinking lemonade. A waste, it just went to waste. Like the Freon cold out the hotel door. The white rocket fade over Cape Canaveral. You've been a daughter to me. You buried shoebox grief. Felt your poltergeist love like Savannah heat. While the waterfall was pouring crazy symbols of my destiny. I watched your face dive backwards, little baby, in my memory. You told me victory was sweet, even deep in the cheap seats. And you don't judge me, that's not your style. But I won't see you for a little while. There are no worries, Lord, who's got time? All these changes gonna fill your mind. Like the citrus glow off the old orange grove. The red rocket blaze over Cape Canaveral. It's been a nightmare to me, some 1980s greed. Give me parachute dreams like old war movies. While the universe was drawing perfect circles from infinity. I watch the stars get smaller, tiny diamonds in my memory. I know that victory is sweet, even deep in the cheap seats.
All right, there's a slight echo. Yeah,
Well
that was
done.
intentional. It's called reverb.
Okay, so before we move on to the other types or the other services, I wanted to show the responsible way to do this,
Yes, please.
which I have just pushed to the page. So if you go ahead and share my screen again.
Oh, very well.
So, like we said before, you don't want to actually serve. So everybody knows, or maybe not everybody knows, but when a web server is serving out content, there's something at the index.html. That's the first place that you go to at a website, first page that you would find. If you do this for a proof of concept, do not serve anything at the index.html. So if there would be anything index.html right here, do not serve anything at that location. All right. What you want to do, I'll pull my GitHub repo back over. Remember that because you control the subdomain, you control the web server, right? So anything after this point, you can put any resource there that you want. So what I have done is made the POC branch of this repo. And I have stored a little file here called slap the keyboard 3 or 4 times or roll your face on the keyboard .html, right? When this page gets pushed, when I do the DNS subdomain takeover, when this page gets pushed, this gets built into the site. And so this is now a resource at this site. If I go to that resource, you'll see that there's nothing there until I view the page source. POC by HuskyHacks, little smiley face. I put my name. I put proof that I have control over the content. It is in a comment. It is not visible. And it's not anywhere that somebody would stumble upon, right?
Yep.
So that is the key right there. If you're going to do this to show impact, do not actually serve anything to the index.html page. And if you'll permit me one final demonstration here, I'm going
Please.
to show you the full weaponization capability of this technique. All right. Check out TTI login. Git branch, rather. Excuse me.
Oh, this is the scary stuff. Oreo Bite, by the way, is saying that you need ASCII art.
Git check out TTI login. There we go. Okay. At the TTI login branch, I have index.html. To prevent spoilers, I'm not going to show you what's there, but I also have the CNAME record, which I'll have to change because this is blog.alpharts. So we'll go ahead and vim CNAME. And I change this to beta. How do I get out of vim? Oh no, right quit bang. There we go. Okay. Git add,
Wait, right quit bang. Right, yeah, okay. You did right.
Yeah. Message, again, message doesn't really matter. Go ahead and push that. Let's go over to the repo itself. Again, this is all on my side as the attacker. I control everything that I'm doing right here into pages. And what we're going to do is change this to TTI login and save. And that should say page saved here in a moment after this loads. And I'm going to git push. All right. And I believe I've been signed out of my GitHub, maybe? Let's just give it a second here. One moment. Nope, yep, we're good. Okay. DNS check successful, as you see here.
Great.
I just got the little unicorn that said this page isn't found on GitHub, which is a little ironic because that's the thing that we're exploiting here. Beta.alpharts.com. We're pushing from TTI login. If we go back over to our code repo and go to the GitHub pages, I just got to push from that TTI login page. We're queued up. We just need to take a moment here. And we hit F5. And we hit F5. And we hit F5. And we hit F5. And then again, we hit F5 and we see active. Okay, great. Oh dear. What does that look like?
Oh my God. Terrifying.
So, this is an example of a full weaponization. As a red teamer, it is within my, power and rules of engagement to do something like this, right? I have critically not included a key ingredient in this, which is that the things that you put into the fields here are not sent anywhere, right? And I'm not going to instruct you on how to do that, left to your own devices if you're a red teamer and you're doing this for legal, ethical purposes. But this is an example of something that you could do, right? This is a full weaponization of this subdomain takeover. You can inject a login page that looks like something that somebody going to that organization would expect to see there, and you can harvest credentials, as the day is long. So yeah, if you actually do anything here, I think you just get like a forbidden maybe, or like a 404 or something on the back end. Yeah, not allowed. So the credentials don't actually go anywhere. But it's not too hard to imagine a scenario where you stand up a web server that does this and it sends credentials somewhere else. So that is my little red teamer POC for the day. And I'm going to go ahead and push back to our beta.alfarts.com. I'm going to push something to the index.html that means that none of you will be able to take it over. We're going to add nano index.html, and then we'll just delete everything here. Actually, you know what? There's an easier way to do this. We'll just...
well, I could delete the record.
Oh, yeah. I guess you could delete the record. If we're done with the record, I think you should just delete the record entirely, yeah.
Yes, I will do that. And the next question is, Husky, do you have an Azure account?
No, I do not have an Azure account. If I do, I have not logged into it in a very long time.
Okay, no worries.
You might have to take the reins on this one.
No, that's fine. So, and that might just be kind of a same person, but we'll demonstrate how it works. So, okay, let me switch you back over to camera mode here.
Mm-hmm.
I have too many windows open, is what's happening. There you be. Okay. And okay, so I have, now that we've demonstrated how scary this is, I'm going to shut down the beta.alfarts record. And this is what you want to do, right? And this needs to be part of your process as an organization. When you bring down your web asset, the DNS records have to go with it. It's always DNS. Here's another instance of it always being DNS. It's very common that DNS records will be managed separately from the web content or managed by a different team, right? Especially if you have like a split zone situation where you have a domain that you use internally and it's going to be routed. The same domain name might be routed differently internally than it is externally. The network operations team might be responsible for that, whereas the application development team builds the content and then works with network ops to get the DNS record, whatever. The change process for spin down has to involve the removal of this CNAME record, or you're going to be vulnerable to these takeovers. And
it's gonna get got.
It's so easy to miss. It's so easy to miss. But this dangling record is what we're looking for. So I'm gonna just knock this off, this mttagger.github.io. I knock this off, and that prevents that from routing to anything on GitHub pages, period.
Nice.
Okay, and I'll save that. Now you see that I have a couple of other records here. We're going to talk about those in just a second. All right, so we've been playing with GitHub pages, but I don't want to give the impression that GitHub pages is the only service on which we can perform this takeover. Going back to the can I take over XYZ, this list is crazy long. And what you're looking for is anything that has vulnerable here. Okay. One of the things that happens to be vulnerable is Microsoft Azure. So how does this work? And to talk about Microsoft Azure and also discuss the other kind of subdomain takeover, I'm going to use my own Azure tenant. So what we just did was a subdomain takeover where the subdomain exists, but the content that it's pointing to has been brought down or disassociated with that domain, right? So we took the repo for alfarts, beta.alfarts.com still existed, right? But we disconnected it from the domain in GitHub pages, and then Husky was able to take it over. That is for a single subdomain. Sometimes you will find records that are even scarier. And that's what we're seeing a lot of with what we were actually looking at in some of these compromises. So for example, nobody at Cornell created slotluarnagari.gsm.cornell.edu. Nobody.
We're pretty sure.
Nobody
We're
did
pretty
that,
sure.
right?
We're pretty sure.
And if we go to gsm.cornell.edu, that one's like just shut down. That doesn't exist. But the domain name works, right? But how is it that the slot domain worked? How did that work? The same way with Brigham Young, right? How did that work? The way that this happens is when you have a wildcard CNAME, which is one of the worst ideas possible. So I've, of course, created these. I've created kind of two of them. So, and just to demonstrate that there's kind of two layers on which this can work. So I have one which is star.alfarts.com. And that's CNAMing over to this icy plant. This is my Azure app. And we'll talk about what this is in just a second and how to make one. And this here is star.dev.alfarts.com. Now, why is this scary? What's scary about this is I can then register with a different .alfarts.com whatever I want. Whatever I want. And it'll still work. So, Husky, is your repo public?
Yeah, because that is my huskyhacks.github.io, so that has to be public. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Perfect.
So you can go ahead, if you just go to my profile, it should be in my repos. You can search for it.
Very good. So what I want to demonstrate first is the kinds of Azure resources that will be vulnerable to this. So you can do it a bunch of different ways, but one of the ways that you're most likely going to find these is in actually Azure Functions and static web apps. So let's talk a little bit about static web apps. I have one here. How do you make one? If you just search Azure for static web apps, this is like the easy way to create a static web app, just like GitHub Pages, but do it through Azure. So I have one already called Domain Takeover, right? If I create a new one, I'll walk you through the process here, right? I'm setting up my subscription. I'll add it to a resource group. Call this DTO2. All this looks good. Now, this is where it gets interesting. So deployment details, right? GitHub account. And then I have a list of repositories here, but I can also, so I can like fork Husky's repo and I can get access to it, right? Exactly this way. That's the easiest way to do it. So let me go to that. It's github.com/HuskyHacks. What is it? HuskyHacks.io?
Yep, huskyhacks.github.io. And I just posted it in the Discord DM.
Rad. Thank you.
But it's, yeah.
Okay. Fork. And I'm going to change that to TaggyHacks. GitHub.io. So we're going to create this fork. Very good. And just because the only reason I'm doing this is so that I have additional content to mess with. Okay?
Yep. And it does say you're forking only the main repo. If you wanted to grab anything from the other, I mean, they're all just flat files. There's nothing really
precisely
tricky going on. So you can just grab whatever branch that you want there.
All right. So let's see if that updated. I'm probably going to have to reload the page. That's fine, though. So create a new static web app. Call it DTO2. The resource group is going to be in DevOps test. Free is good. I want it in WestUS2 for reasons. GitHub, this is good. Yes. And perfect. There's my repo. Branch is main. Everything's good. We're just going to review and create. Awesome. This one doesn't show my phone number, which I really appreciate. Thanks very much, Azure.
Yeah.
And then we're off to the races. This is going to create a new static web app. It's that easy. You connect a GitHub repo or Azure DevOps if you're insane. No, Azure DevOps is cool, actually. But GitHub is really, really easy. And then you go to the resource, and here it is. Now, the first thing it'll tell you is that there's a URL. Now, this is not quite right. It says Azure Static Apps.net. So waiting for your content. How do we know that it's up? The way that Azure Static Apps work is that there's the static app and then there's the deployment. So there you can have like a dev test prod deployment. And so if we go down to our, I always lose these environments. there is a production and it's waiting for deployment, right? So it's like on its way. Let's recap a little bit what's taking place and what we're doing for those of you who might be a little bit lost.
Yeah. So honestly, Olgit, when we get into the Azure side of things, I'm even like a little, ooh, this is kind of a bit of a forest. So don't worry about it. When it really boils down to is an organization puts a web resource DNS record to something that they used to have operational that they don't have anymore, that there's nothing there anymore. And we as attackers or as researchers take advantage of that.
Exactly right. We're kind of doing the parts to show you how you make a static web app. We did GitHub Pages is really easy. In Azure, which is another vulnerable service, it's a little bit trickier, but definitely still possible. Okay, so now you can see that this thing is ready, and if I click on the browse, it'll take me to this content. So check this out, azurestaticapps.net. Now, I have another Azure static app in my account, right? If we go to my static web apps, you can see that I have another one, which is called Domain Takeover. And this one has a different URL, sort of, except that it's locked to this thing called alpha.alfarts.com, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, if I go into custom domain, you can see that I have alpha.alfarts.com and alpha.dev.alfarts.com, right? But what I want to experiment with is what happens, because I can remove these, but what happens since I have a wildcard, right? Without making any changes here. What happens if I register for the other one, let's say gamma.alfarts.com, without making any changes to the DNS? Okay, so I'm going to go over to DTO2, custom domains. And the point I'm trying to make is that it doesn't necessarily have to be my account that does this, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So
again, with no authentication here,
right,
with no step stopping whomever is doing this to say, hey, are you actually part of this organization? People have free reign to do this when they use these services.
Right. So I'm hoping this works. So if I go domain name, let's say gamma.alfarts.com, and by the way, gamma.dev, because the reason I did that is that the wildcards can be nested, right? You can have a subdomain and still have a wildcard in it. But we'll do this one first and see what happens. Okay. Now it says that you should add this value. I'm curious what happens. Okay, so this one says CNAME record is invalid. Please ensure has been created. So it doesn't. That's interesting. Now I'm trying to think about like how to make this work, because I know that yeah. So this is the Microsoft documentation on how this works. I'm sorry, it's deprovisioned. Oh right, okay. So if I got it, in the DTO, the first domain takeover one, if I disconnect these domains, Or maybe the way that this works is that if you have a wildcard, the wildcard might actually not work in Azure, which is good news now that I think about it.
Yeah, that's great news.
Because it's getting routed to a specific URL, a little bit differently. So I'll still try it. So we've removed it here, and then we'll go back to DTO2 and go to custom domains. And if I add other DNS, we do gamma.alfarts.com. Next. So I would still need to register this different account, right? Mm-hmm. Now the question is, could a separate domain name, because you can't have a separate, sorry, let me try that sentence again. I still have to control the top level, or the root domain, right? alfarts.com. Somebody else can't register gamma.alfarts.com for me.
Right. Yeah.
But if somebody's using a wildcard and then takes all of this down,
mm-hmm.
Actually, yeah, I don't know if this works against Azure Static Apps now that I think about it. So that's good news.
That would be very, very good news.
So if we
worry about.
Yeah, but let's try this against GitHub pages then.
GitHub pages, yeah.
Because with the star.alfarts.com, let's change this to point to my account.
Yep.
Okay. Now, keep in mind that I still haven't reconnected my alfarts.com account, right?
Yep.
Which means, and did you knock down? Oh, Husky. So what I'd love for you to do mm-hmm. is change up your demonstration mm-hmm. to point to gamma.alfarts.com.
Gamma.alfarts.com. Okay. Well, I actually stopped sharing, so I could probably share again.
Yeah, let me just delete.
Just in case you want to see that.
I definitely do, because I've done my part, which is...
Yep. Decommission a record. Now I can take it over. So...
Okay. Let me get you sharing here.
So I have I'll talk through what I'm doing. I'll do the over explanation here. So I go into my GitHub Pages account, into that page setting place, and I go to deploy from branch and POC. So remember, this is the nice, safe, responsible one where it just has like an HTML file that I've rolled my face on the keyboard a couple times, and it just says this is, HuskyHacks was here. So I've done that, and now instead of beta.alfarts.com, we're going to do gamma, right?
Mm-hmm.
And save as gamma.alfarts.com. We save, we wait, it does the little DNS check, but again, resolution will still happen, even if the check isn't complete. And we will, I believe, changing the CNAME pushes a new file to that repository. And so, let's go back to the POC branch here. And see, again, see how CNAME is updated, and that's been pushed now, and we've got a little indicator that the page is building here. So we go into GitHub Pages.
It's already up.
We just kind of... Oh, it's already up, okay. Well, then we go to gamma.alfarts.com. And there it is. So... Yeah, it looks like we still have the TTI login here. So maybe the streams didn't get switched over correctly, but that still demonstrates we just did a wildcard. We did a record that did not exist, and we just pushed content to that as well.
Right. So again, to clarify, there is no such record as gamma.alfarts.com, right? But the wildcard means that somebody can register whatever they damn well please. And that will point to, now we're using GitHub Pages. The good news is that Azure actually makes it way harder to do this, right? Because they're doing a better check against a specific URL as opposed to like an account.
And I just refreshed, and now we're at the 404 that has the face roll, roll face on keyboard thing here. So if I pull index.html, or rather, excuse me, if I pull from POC and I go, whatever.html, again, gamma.alfarts.com/ my little POC here, I should see nothing on the page. I view page source, and I've got POC by HuskyHacks.
Right.
So that's why wildcard CNAME records are a bad idea. A bad idea.
They sure are. So I'm going to knock those off. I'm going to knock off my wildcard records. Go ahead and reload the page then. Let's see if it's still...
Oh, and I'm viewing page source, so I can get out of that.
How quickly does this DNS record propagate?
And we hit F5. We hit F5. And we hit F5. We hit F5. We hit F5. Now we hit F5. And then we hit it again. And then we hit it again.
Why don't you hit F12 for me?
And again. And F12.
Click and hold the reload button.
Click and hold the reload. Which reload button?
Next to your address bar.
Oh, empty cache and hard reload.
Yep. There we go.
404, nothing found. So there we go. Boom. Good.
So that's a lot better. Actually, we shouldn't be seeing a GitHub Pages at all, right? For gamma.alfarts.com. It should just not route. So that might take a little bit to propagate.
Yep.
But it is saved out. That is essentially what I wanted to demo today. So we wanted to, it's a shorter stream, but we wanted to talk a little bit about Subdomain Takeover, how to exploit it, and then preventing it is honestly just a matter of process. Let me switch this up here. There's Husky full screen. So how do we defend against this? The way to defend against this is about process. When you are bringing up, first of all, don't use wildcard. Don't use wildcard DNS records, period. That's part one.
I think like WordPress does that by default, maybe? Because like you could like huskyhacks.dev can like blank.huskyhacks.dev points at my blog page, right? So I think it wildcards it so that anything just goes right over there. So that's not necessarily...
So let's actually even talk about that. If you can at all avoid it, don't use your host's own DNS registrar.
Yeah, for sure.
I love Google Domains. I think they're a great DNS registrar. Don't use Cloudflare because they support Nazis. But you can, Google Domains is good. There's, what else?
I mean, like if
network solutions. If you hate yourself,
if you're a young and scrappy red teamer, I mean, Namecheap is probably your DNS registrar of choice.
Right. Let's distinguish about how to do this for like actual red teamers and actual organizations. So actual organizations, right, have a reputable DNS registrar. Google Domains, GoDaddy.
Google Domains. Yeah.
If you want to, but if you're deploy your Route 53, absolutely, right? Azure DNS is actually pretty good too. If you are an organization that is deploying a lot of web content, for the love of God, do some auditing on the services that you're deploying to. If you're doing a managed service, like if it's cPanel or WordPress or Acquia or whatever, go and check them out to see how they handle this particular issue and make sure that they have defenses against it. If they don't, look elsewhere. So again, props to Pantheon for at least recognizing the problem that they had and moving to address it, since it was brought to their attention. Props to Azure for making this actually super hard, at least with static web apps. And be aware of, there are a couple of other services that are super popular that I know that this is going to be an issue with. So for example, I know that they have, can I take over? Let's see. Oh, Vercel is not vulnerable. Good for them. Vercel is not vulnerable. Was Super listed on here?
I have not. It's not on there, no.
Yeah.
And I've kind of taken it as a project to see if that is vulnerable to it. But you said that they house inside of Vercel, so maybe they're okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, to be determined. I'll take a look and see. if I can do
Netlify
that.
also super popular, and it's edge casey, but it's that one also has better
Oh my
defenses
god,
against this.
Ngrok. Oh man.
That makes sense.
It does make sense, but that's just like I didn't even think in that dimension of that as a possibility.
I have received traffic on my ngrok instance
That's
just like
so
at
weird.
random, because so people
Yeah.
are spidering for ngrok
Yeah, it
addresses
makes
out
sense.
there. Read the docs, terrifying. So
The docs,
that's
yeah,
really
same kind of
gnarly.
in a similar vein as GitHub pages, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
So any of these that are free are the ones you want to be, or have a free tier, are the ones you want to be afraid of, in particular. So again, like read the docs. I think readme.io, Pantheon has a free tier. All of these you want to be aware of. And so yeah, just make sure that you're setting up non-wildcard domains. Make sure that when you bring down web content, you're bringing down the CNAMEs with it, and you will not be vulnerable to this. But as we saw, it is very common for massive
yeah.
organizations to be vulnerable to this. And you can perform this search with whatever you want. If we do like .com or .gov, you will find content. People have been gotten by this, right? Pretty terrifyingly.
Yeah. This is from the attacker's perspective. This is recon. That's why I said at the beginning, and I will reiterate again: recon. All it takes is a single resource that has been decommissioned pointing to one of these services, and a ne'er-do-well can take it over, right?
Yep.
So use Aquatone, use Sublister, find your DNS records, find where they point to. If they don't point to anything anymore, raise a question, right? That's all under the umbrella of attack surface reduction and open source intelligence. And that's the long and short of it. I mean, this technique is so powerful. And yeah, if it just takes one. So yeah.
Absolutely. All right, so I think we're going to call it a day here. It's a little bit of an early stream, but I think we packed a lot into an hour and a half. We have a number of other InfoSec streamers who are currently streaming. We have our choice of raids.
Up? Yeah, who's up? Let's see.
From the hack list, we have Nova, of course.
Yep.
Producer Wolf, MT Taggart, we're not going to raid them. Anya, Tibbs, and Cyber Warrior Studios. What do you think about Tibbs?
I say, is Tibbs online? I see offline in his.
Oh, interesting.
Hold on. Yeah, Tibbs is offline. Otherwise,
let me reload this. Oh, weird. The InfoSec streams has him on.
I don't know if he's got like a sock puppet.
Let's see if Anya's on. If she is, then that's a good destination for us. Yes. All right, perfect. We'll do Aniaski, also known as Anya. Get that raid going. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Lucky Umbrella asks, did you show how to test it safely? Yes, we did. So we showed the recon component of this, and we showed how to, if you're going to exploit this to demonstrate risk, we showed how to do it responsibly without putting, straight up index.html out there. So yes, we absolutely did that.
Yeah, it's just a long story short. If you have control of a subdomain and you can perform a takeover, don't put anything at index.html. Throw a million random characters.html and throw a single HTML comment in there with your name that shows impact. Don't do anything that can actually get somebody in trouble or compromise somebody like that. If you're a red teamer and you're performing a red team engagement where social engineering is within the scope of the red team engagement, that's a different story. If you're just looking to demonstrate impact in a pen test, web app test, or attack surface reduction perspective, that's plenty for a proof of concept to just put your name in an HTML comment.
Absolutely. All right, so we're going to get out of here. We're going to set up this raid. Thank you so much, everybody, for hanging out. I'll be back on Wednesdays doing some programming, I suspect. But until next time, friends, please be good to yourselves, be good to each other, and happy hacking. We'll see you next time.
See.